Welcome to a short reflection by Sebastian Mahfoud on Canto XIII of Dante's Inferno. XIII describes the Harpies, who are defilers of all they touch, as hideous birds with the faces of malign women. Their function as guardians of the suicide is actually kind of apt, since they are, after all, birds, and birds live in trees, breaking the limbs and leaves to serve as shelter and food. The souls, who in life found an expression for their pain only in the letting of their own blood, find that in death they are able to moan and wail when their blood is let for them by these banshees. The Harpies give the poets no trouble, though, nor do they seem to plague the wraiths racing away from the pack of dogs we meet in the latter part of the canto. They are fairly self-contained, then, unlike the Furies we met at the gates of Dis. Aristotle writes in his Nicomachean Ethics that when a man in violation of the law harms another voluntarily, he acts unjustly, and he who through anger voluntarily stabs himself is acting unjustly. But towards whom? Surely towards the state, not towards himself. For he suffers voluntarily, but no one is voluntarily treated unjustly. That the injustice of suicide lies in a crime against the state rather than against the self is of interest to the placement of the suicides as dead wood that both separates and joins the violent against neighbor and the violent against God. That suicide is unforgivable is due precisely to this idea that there is no way for the suicide, after his act is complete, to seek atonement or forgiveness for the action. While the self is voluntarily injured in the act, the injustice that has been done both to the social fabric, that finds itself with a hole ripped through it, and to God, who created the soul in an act of love, is the real issue here. Because the suicides intentionally destroyed their bodies in life, they don't get to resemble them in death, Pierre della Vigne explains. Not even after Judgment Day, when they return to earth to collect the actual matter they once were. They'll only be able to hang the lifeless corpses over their branches. Within the wood, the poets encounter two wraiths, Giacomo da Sant'Andrea and Lano da Siena, who are racing away from a pack of black bitches, who rip them to pieces and carry off their limbs. XIII notes that Lano so wasted his substance that he courted death at the Battle of Tappo, in order to avoid having to live life as a destitute, and that Giacomo wasted not only his own goods but also those of his neighbors. It makes sense, then, that Giacomo would take refuge inside of a bush, so that the dogs that rip him apart would also rip apart the soul within the bush. These squanderers, then, are not mere profligates like we saw in the fourth circle crashing boulders against the hoarders. They are those who so consumed the resources for which they were responsible that they lost hope of life, and fell into the despair of the suicidal, even though they were killed by someone else. Despair is such an obstacle to love that it affects not only our ability to forgive, but also our ability to seek forgiveness and to pursue a new beginning. Those of us who despair are doing damage not only to ourselves, but also to the communities within which we are meant to function, for we pull ourselves away from those communities many times prior to the moment of our ultimate self-destruction. In doing so, we visit upon our communities an injustice and are ourselves unjust. To address despair, we have to recognize it for what it is. We have to make a conscious effort to seek forgiveness from those who are adversely affected by our actions, and from God, whose ultimate gift we squander. And then we have to forgive whoever it is who we find ourselves blaming, whether that be God or man. These are the steps out of despair, and the process we intentionally enter is one that will build on itself. For once the habit of forgiveness is in place, we'll be able to make peace with ourselves and start anew in the interpersonal relationships that are so dear to us.